How can we approach public speaking with ease? This is Open Mind Alexander Technique. I'm Jess. Today we're looking at speaking in front of other people, particularly to a group of people, and how we can be aware of the use of ourselves even when doing something like reading from a script, reading from a book, presenting in front of people, job interviews, lots of different cases where we will need to be able to speak in front of people without losing our own self-regulation. So, this action that I've just done here, I took my mark out of my book, I positioned myself a certain distance from my music stand here, my lectern, if we want to, talk in non-music terms. All of these things I'm doing while already speaking. I can walk around and be able to come up to my place in front of my audience and still center myself. Let's talk about that term. Centering yourself has several different terms, or several different meanings to the term. The way that I'm using it here is more in a mental capacity. I can center as in put central to my brain, kind of more prioritize my organization of myself. In the same way that when I'm speaking to someone who is particularly tall, much taller than me, the way that I prioritize my organization of myself compared to this other person is, you don't get to have the power to make me tighten my neck to have to look up at you. So I might stand a little bit further back when I'm talking to someone very tall. In this case, I am prioritizing my organization of myself as I approach my speaking place, the location that I'm going to. I am already thinking about asking my neck to not grab onto my head, letting my back go up to my ears, letting my skull just rest at its poised spot on top of my spine, which is between my ears, behind my nose. I'm thinking about allowing my breath to move. I'm thinking about allowing my knees to release forward while my whole back, down to the very bottom of the pelvis, stays back. And I'm doing that before I start. That's pretty key. So let's look at what a couple of those aspects look like. So as I'm moving around here, you can see how I'm organizing myself as I'm just kind of pacing back and forth and walking, making sure I'm still probably within the frame of the camera here. And as I'm moving around, notice that I am not allowing my shoulders to get behind my hip joints. My hip joints on me are right about there as far as height and forward back location. They're about this far in on each side. So this is kind of the cross section here. If we point to where both of my fingers would extend into my leg joint here, this is where my hip joint actually is. And then here's my shoulder. So I'm not allowing my hip joints to end up in front of my shoulders. This is the most common pattern that I see from my students when they come in and I put them right behind something else. If they're close to an object, they tend to want to go into this spot with it. So this is where you'll see people doing dishes, leaning down to try to get a drink of water, right? Anything that involves forward and down, this is where most of my students will habitually go if they're not trying to counteract that habit. How does that apply to my stand with a book on it here? As I approach this, I'm asking my whole back, including my low back, to stay back. So I'm using opposition here. When my hands go forward to be able to interact with the book, or to move the height of the stand if I need to, or just to have my hands rest on something because I want to be able to gesture and speak and have nonverbal communication from my hands as part of my presentation. This is available because I have my hands in opposition to my back. So my whole back is not swinging forward in various different ways. The most common one being people do this when they put their hands on something that is forward and down. So keeping my whole back, allowing my knees to be soft. So they're my shock absorbers. This also helps me to not get locked into place, not feel stiff. This will help with nerves for a lot of people to be able to do teeny tiny movements and kind of side to side shifts with a little bit of bounce as you're speaking. Speaking is an expressive activity. It should be. We are expressing things. And of course we can move as we're speaking. I do this all the time. This is one of my standard movements for when I'm talking to people, particularly as a teacher, especially in my group class where they're often seated and I'm standing. I will gesture to them like this, and notice that this is not solely an arm movement. This is also legs. So it's here. Yes, that's a great question. Here's that movement. My back has stayed back. Same thing applies to this. I'll go at a kind of diagonal here so you can see from front and side. My back is staying back. I find that a slight lunge, just meaning one of my feet is a little bit further forward than the other, not tightrope walking, not directly behind each other, but still at my normal standing width, and just have one foot that's a little further forward than the other. Gives me a lot of nice forward-backward balance leeway. I like this. This is where I would probably approach something like this, which I'll do in a second. I'll actually read a bit from this book for you, and you can watch how I do it. So, as my arms move forward, I'm keeping my back back, and notice that as I do that, I am not allowing my neck to tighten. This is an interesting one in public speaking situations because there's usually somewhere that we want to look, and that somewhere is not always at our eye level. So if I'm, for example, on a stage, I'm giving a big talk in some sort of like auditorium that has multiple levels to it, I want to be able to occasionally look up at the upper balcony. So when I look up, I'm going to do that with lengthening rather than with compression. You see how this immediately changes things? I'll show you from the side so you can see it again. So here's looking up with lengthening, being able to talk and gesture to an upper balcony, versus compression. This has compressed the back of my neck and kind of squished me down. And you can kind of hear the difference in my voice, where I tend to go more towards vocal fry, which is the sound, when I'm in this stretched position in the front of my throat, because this is actually where my vocal folds are, right in your, around the larynx. Vocal folds need to vibrate and hit together at a certain tension, and if I stretch that too much, it'll change that tension and I'll have more trouble being able to use my voice as accurately as I would want to. So I do occasionally use vocal fry on purpose for as part of my communication. Vocal fry is not illegal, but it's not my normal speaking voice. And if I notice that I'm going into vocal fry because I've started to kind of compress myself and go here as I'm trying to, for example, look up at something, that might be a cue for me that I'm compressing myself. And maybe I can reset and ask for easeful lengthening connection that's a little bit more balanced. So I can speak towards an upper floor up here. I'm still asking my whole back to stay back, widening, or I can speak down. If I'm on stage and my audience is down on, orchestra level, I can talk down as well. The way that I'm doing that is, again, from the legs, truly. The way we interact with down is by moving the whole torso tower back at the base, which is going to send my vision, and therefore also my voice, down. So if I need to speak down, or neutral, or up, I have all of these options that I can do without doing something unhelpful for my voice and for my nonverbal cueing. So to show you what that looks like, I'm going to read just a couple sections from this book. This is Pedro de Alcantara's book, Indirect Procedures, a musician's guide to the Alexander technique. This isn't like a textbook for my class, it's just one that I have available. So I'm just going to read some sections of the very beginning of chapter 1 of this, just to show you what can it look like when someone is reading from print in front of an audience, in this case a camera. We tend to compartmentalize different aspects of our lives. Into one box, we put things that we consider physical: the body, movement, posture, tension, and relaxation. Into a second box goes all that we consider psychological: moods, emotions, feelings, opinions, suppositions. And into a third box goes all that appears to be metaphysical: symbols, metaphors, and spiritual concepts that transcend our everyday existence. This determines many of our behaviors. For instance, we visit the osteopath to deal with the physical, the psychotherapist to deal with the psychological, and the priest to deal with the metaphysical. The separation of the physical, the psychological, and the metaphysical, however, is illusory and potentially handicapping. So, when I reached the end of my paragraph there, and this is something that I have at least glanced at before, right? I'm not totally reading blind. I have some idea of my phrasing. I have some idea of, here's a place to put in a breath and give my audience a chance to catch up mentally. I have found that it makes me a better speaker to just allow more time for me to breathe, which is great for me too. I can include that phrasing and kind of line structure in my movement, very much in the same way that I would if I were singing. So, towards the end of that paragraph, the separation of those three things, however, is illusory and potentially handicapping. What have I done here? I still have a hand up. I have leaned a little into my lunge on purpose. This is a shift in positioning. A lot of people will interpret a bit of a forward lean, tilt of the head as closing a distance and bringing people together. So I can go here at the end of a phrase. If I want a big dramatic effect at the end of a phrase, I might lean back. This is a big statement. This is possibly something shocking, something I want to really impact you. I might come back, allowing lots of space. So my weight shifting can be an aspect of my nonverbal cueing and will leave your audience with a very different impression than if you stand square, 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 and don't move. It will look very stiff. You will look probably very nervous. And it's going to be a lot harder for you as the speaker to maintain that for long periods of time. So when you first get into a public speaking situation, right off the bat, even frequently before you start speaking, the second they can see you, you are being observed. And that's okay. You can still come back to the use of yourself, ask your neck to not grab onto your head, find your place, and look around for a second. See who's there, who is in the room. And when I take a breath, I'm really allowing my back to move. That's one thing that I notice a lot of people will do, particularly when they're either on camera or in front of an audience. They really want to take a big breath by trying to open their chests, and that doesn't work. That's not how chests work. This can't come apart. This is not how that works. Our breath actually comes from a rotation in the ribs, particularly at the back. So if I think about allowing my back to move, giving permission for movement to happen, it will make me a better speaker and a better presenter. So I would encourage all of you who need to go into any sort of public speaking or teaching or presenting situation to consider the use of yourself. Take a few moments before you get to your place, presenting, speaking place, to check in with yourself. Asking the neck to not grab onto your head, remembering your back goes up to your ears and down to the bottom of your pelvis, bottom of the sit bones. And there can be opposition between arms moving forward and back staying back. I would encourage you all to give this a try with your public speaking and see how it changes not just how you feel, but how other people take your performance and how they read your nonverbals. I find that this frequently can be an extremely helpful methodology for improving stage presence. Teaching is stage presence. Making people want to listen to us is stage presence. Being able to have a good organization of yourself improves that tremendously. Give it a try. See what happens.